Hopefully by now you have already done your PODs and now you are ready to watch the video so that you can do your word problems for today. What we're going to talk about today is actually a review of stuff that we've already talked about in the last unit, but I just wanted to remind you. So you should have your half sheet of paper. It should be blue. It should look exactly like my screen. So we're just going to run through and talk about how do you set an equation up in slope-intercept form when we're talking word problems. We already went through this, like I said, last unit, just some reminders. Remember when we're doing this, what each letter is going to stand for. So let's start with the Y. Usually the Y value, and you're writing down what I'm writing down, is going to represent your cost or your total. Most of the word problems you're going to see today, they're going to talk about cost or they're going to say something about total. Usually when you're writing these, this is going to be a letter. A lot of times you're going to use the C here instead of the Y. So if you have a word problem, you're going to say C equals. You're not going to put a number here to start most of the time. Moving on, your M. We know that M is the same thing as slope. And we also know slope is the same thing as rate of change. When we're talking word problems, this number is going to be a number that happens over and over again. Depending on what you're talking about, it might be something that happens monthly or hourly or daily, but something that's going to happen over and over and over and over again. So that's what your slope is going to represent over and over. Remember, sorry, my handwriting's bad. Usually the X is just going to stay X, so it's just going to be a variable. Sometimes this variable will change depending on what it's talking about. If the problem specifically tells you what variable to use, then use the variable it tells you to use. A lot of times it'll say you're going to use C and H or some other letter. If it doesn't give you a letter, just use X. Last thing is your B. We know when we graph this is our y-intercept. Also think about the fact that when we're graphing slope-intercept form, this is where we start. So this value is going to be your starting point. Sometimes it is going to be called your one-time fee. So you're only going to do this one time. Sometimes you might see the word initial fee. The big thing you need to realize when we're talking about these word problems, whatever is going to go where your slope is or your M value, this thing's happening over and over and over and over again. This number is only going to happen once. So maybe you have money saved up. This is the amount you're starting in your savings account. Maybe you have to pay a one-time fee to do something. That number is going to go here. The M is going to be something that happens repeatedly. You're going to do it multiple times. Y and X, again, are just going to stay letters when we do this. So let's flip our paper over to the other side, and we're going to do an example together. So our example says a canoe rental service charges a $20 transportation fee and $30 an hour to rent a canoe. Write an equation representing the cost, which it wants us to use Y this time, of renting a canoe for X hours. So the letters it wants us to use in this problem are Y and X. So we're going to keep those where they should go. So Y should go here, equals. We're going to put a number here. We're not sure what that is yet, X. And then we're going to put another number back here. So going back to what we just talked about with our Y equals MX plus B, you want to try and figure out what number is only going to happen one time. So am I going to pay 20 bucks one time? Or do I have to pay $30 one time? Well, if you read this, it's telling us that we're going to do $30 for every hour. It also tells us that X stands for hours. That means that 30 and X need to go together. So every hour I have that canoe, I'm paying 30 bucks. So that's why 30 and X need to go together. So that means that this 20 bucks is only going to happen one time, which makes sense because you're only paying it one time to get your canoe. So this is the equation we're going to set up. You should write it over here where it says A equals so that you're organized and you can see it. This is my equation. Now, this is where we struggled when we took our test last time. You're going to use this equation that we just came up with over here to solve B and C. You're not going to make up some new wild and crazy thing. So B says, what is the cost of renting the canoe for 6 hours? Well, we just said that hours was X. So we're going to use our equation. This time, instead of having an X, you're going to put a 6 there. And then you can just use your calculator or your brain to solve your math. 30 times 6, I believe, is 180. Plus 20 is going to give you 200. When I write my answer, I always want to label it. It's $200. So if I want to rent a canoe for 6 hours, I'm going to pay $200. Okay, part C. Now, this is the part where you might want to put a star. This might get confusing. Be prepared. So this time it says if you paid $320, how many hours did you rent the canoe? So 320 is not hours, it's the total amount. And if you remember, total amount they told us was what Y is. So that means instead of having Y, I'm going to use 320. So I'm going to put 320 equals, and now I'm going to use the rest of my original equation. Because at the end of the day, I'm looking for hours, which is X. I can draw my T-chart. I'm going to run out of room here. I can subtract the 20 and move it to the other side, which is going to leave me with 300. Let me see if I can move this down. Maybe. Which is going to leave me with 300 equals 30x. Divide, and your x should equal 10. So over here where our answers go, we're going to say x equals 10, and then we have to label hours. Hopefully this is just a review and you remember doing this from last unit. Use these notes, and you're going to now do the worksheet over word problems. I don't care if you work with a neighbor or a partner as long as you're on task. Make sure you're answering each question though. Lots of them have more than one question. So make sure you're answering them all. When you're done with your word problems, you will turn them in. This piece of paper goes in your linear section of your math binder, and then you need to go get the next assignment, which should be graphing linear functions. See you guys tomorrow.